From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex episode of the day. So, Kris, thanks so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So I see you fixed your hair today, like me, right?
So it's wash and wear hair.
Isn't it awesome? How old were you when you shaved it down? Do you remember what year that was?
Oh gosh, it's been a while. I was probably 30 years old or so, and made the decision that the time had come to bring it down short and embrace the lack of shampoo and hairbrush.
Hey, I'm not kidding you. I think I was right at 30 as well. I was getting ready to go on a camping trip with my boys who were little at the time, and we all shaved our heads down because we were going to be gone for 2 weeks and not showering or whatever, and I thought, oh, let's shave our head down. I don't have to worry about their hair or anything while I'm out camping. When I came back from that trip, I never grew my hair back out. Like that was it. It was over after that.
Yeah, sometimes you got to take the leap, and it's freeing for sure. I don't know how girls do it.
I couldn't agree more. I love it. So Kris, let's tell the listeners a little about yourself, personally. I mean, before we get into WMO and SureUP, which we'll talk a lot about, I mean, let's talk about you as a person. I mean, a pilot, right? An Ironman, an author, you've written a book. You've done all kinds of stuff. Talk about you as a person a little bit. And if you don't mind, let's start early, like where you grew up and a little bit about your family. Sure.
Yeah. So I grew up in a little town in Massachusetts, Medfield. Ironically, in a lot of the Disney movies, Medfield's featured as the town.
Okay.
And there are stories about that I won't bore you with today. But both my parents and my wife's parents, my mom has since passed, but they all kind of raised our families in Medfield, and my dad and my wife's two parents are still there. So
okay.
Great little town and good place to grow up. It was the proverbial one light town at the time. Now there are two or three. It's grown up a bit, and there's even a Starbucks.
Is there now? How far from Boston would this be?
So it's about 30 minutes outside of Boston. I live in Foxborough, Massachusetts now, which is about the same distance from Boston, just sort of a slightly different spoke out of the city.
Okay.
So there's a little known football team that plays in Foxborough as well.
Yeah, I've never heard of them. I live in Colorado, and it's tough to be a Patriots fan living in Colorado. Trust me, my friends give me hell all the time. It's tough, but I'm with you. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. My wife and I are with you. We're huge Patriots fans. All right, so for all those listeners that hate the Patriots, you can continue listening. It's okay. We're not going to talk about that the whole time. So what'd your folks do?
So my dad was a quality assurance engineer for Honeywell. He worked in their printed circuit board facility in Brighton, Massachusetts. And my mom worked in the school system during the day. And while we were all going through college, she actually worked at night as well out at a hospital, as an assistant to some of the docs there. So really a lot of sacrifice on behalf of my parents that you really didn't appreciate when you were growing up. You don't appreciate those things, I think, until you start having kids of your own and realize that he sacrificed his career to coach the soccer team at 3:30 in the afternoon, right? That kind of stuff. So so it's great. They did really well in their careers. Some of that quality assurance engineer thought process rubbed off on me. And certainly has, propelled me in a direction as I've grown my career over the years as well.
How many siblings?
So I've got two. I've got an older brother and a younger brother. So I'm a middle child, which probably explains most of the problems I have.
It's me. It's me. I'm here. Pay attention. Pay attention. Right. The
Right.
middle child. Okay. All right. Cool. So you graduate high school from that little town. How did you decide where to go to school, and how did you decide what to major in?
So my whole family went to Boston University, so it was almost like a foregone conclusion. That's where I was going.
Okay.
So I commuted to school. I worked my way through. I worked for UPS in the early morning shift during that time, and the first 3 years got a really good operations management background at BU.
Okay.
I moved into finance and economics as sort of a dual major as I finished up there at BU. But I commuted to school, so I'd work in the mornings, like the 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning shift, and then head on to school from there. So it was it was definitely a busy time for me. They had a great tuition reimbursement program, which helped out an awful lot. UPS is a terrific organization in terms of how they run things, and I learned an awful lot working there. I made the mistake of going from a union kind of laborer, if you will, loading the trucks, to supervising those people in my last year at UPS. And the reason I say it was a mistake is because what that meant is you got to load the trucks for anybody who didn't show up on your shift. so it literally doubled the work. The other thing you got to do was you got to deliver the overnight packages that got left behind when the drivers left.
Ooh,
so on my way to school, right, I had to make a few stops, and I guess they didn't realize Worcester is in the opposite direction of Boston, right? So, but they were serious about what they did, and it was a great learning experience for me. Early morning shift for anyone that's done that, it's a different world, right? You're changing your internal clock. The one thing, I'll say something else about my dad. So my dad, he'd get up and wake me up in the morning to go to that job. And, those are things that he didn't have to do, right?
Yep.
But he did it. 5 days a week, he was up at 3:30 to make sure I was on my way.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Worked your way through college, got your degree in, I guess it was in economics, or in business, and then what, a minor in finance? What was it?
Yeah, so I did operations management was the primary degree, and I got a dual major in finance and economics as well.
Okay, and then you decided to go to business school?
Yeah. So I started business school at BU. I never finished that. I started down a path. I worked for Chrysler Corp year. I worked through that. That was sort of my first quote unquote real job right out of school. And then I made the decision to, kind of head off in the entrepreneurial environment, and a lot of what pushed me in that direction is at that time, as I was finishing up school, my dad, who was about maybe 55 at the time, he started laying people off in his organization for the and of course the path, right? As soon as he got finished laying off the people that worked for him, he was next in line. So that kind of tainted my corporate America experience a bit, and forced me into the direction of kind of starting to work for myself and try to figure out the path. I don't think, aside from my Chrysler Corporation job, I don't think I've had a W-2.
So I want to pause for a second. I want to make sure I understand. So, and by the way, your for the listeners, the audio is pausing every once in a while, but I think we're okay. If it keeps doing it, we might switch over to your laptop, but I think we're okay. So when you went to work for Chrysler while you were in business school, or you had already stopped going to get your MBA at that point?
So I had stopped. I went to work full time for Chrysler.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're in that job for about a year. You see these layoffs happening. You're talking to your dad, who sounds like you had a close relationship with. Were you still living at home, or did you already have an apartment somewhere, or what was your deal there?
Yeah. So I had rented a house down in Johnston, Rhode Island. My wife and I got married that year, and started our, life together in Johnston, Rhode Island. And she was finishing up her graduate degree. She's a speech pathologist.
Okay.
So she was finishing up her graduate degree in Rhode Island while I was commuting to Boston.
And
So
and okay, so right in there, but somehow you wake up and say, I'm going to quit this job and start my own thing. Now, this is, I really want to make sure you cover the details there. That's that's the scary part for everybody right there, right? You're thinking, okay,
totally.
in your head, you're thinking, I don't want to be just some employee that gets laid off, at any time. I want to have more security than that. Where did this entrepreneurial spirit come from? Like how did that happen? Were you always thinking in high school and college you were going to do your own thing? Like where'd that bug come from?
Well, so I actually started like most folks that start small businesses when they're really young. I had a landscape company that I had started while I was in high school.
Okay.
And so I had that bug. I sold that company off when I went to college.
What? What? You had your own company and sold it while you were in high school? You skipped that earlier. That's pretty big.
Yeah. So I had that experience, the sort of M&A,
I see.
that kind of thought process underscored where I was headed.
Now
I see. And that helped to pay for school and ultimately, drove me forward. It was funny though. So I remember having this discussion with my wife. We were newly married, and her family had a great deal of influence. We grew up together, so her family had a great deal of influence on me as well. Her dad was a plumber.
Okay.
He worked really hard and built a good sized company for himself, which he then later sold. But
I see.
And her mom worked for her dad.
Okay.
So there's a lot of that sort of, we own our own business, we get some flexibility, but it's not all good, right?
Yeah.
There are the good days and the bad days and the lean times and the rich times, right?
Yeah,
so
okay. But
so I had a good dose of that growing up.
Yeah, now I see. Okay, now I see how that ties together. Okay, and there's some influences there, and you had done it in high school. So, okay, cool. So you get ready to leave Chrysler. Did you know what you wanted to do? Did you know what you wanted? Yeah.
I didn't really know. I knew I wanted to do something on my own and be somewhat independent. My mother was working in the medical environment at the time. She was working for a cardiologist. I did a little work consulting for that medical practice.
As an engineer or operations, or what kind of consulting?
Yeah, mostly operations, right?
Okay.
Kind of looking at what they were doing and how they were doing it and trying to manage systems and workflow and all of those kinds of things. And that was really my background, right? The operations management component really shined for me, and I understood it. So that kind of paved the way for the rest of what I've done. I've kind of looked through different opportunities over the years. I've consulted on a series of business opportunities for others, always from a systems and operations management perspective.
Okay, great. So you start doing that. You start doing some consulting, and did you file like your own little LLC or start a brand, or what were you doing at the time then?
A lot of freelance stuff.
Okay.
I'd get referred into different places. I'd work through, they'd say, hey, look, this guy helped me out. And, one of their other buddies would say, hey, could you help me too? Because mine's a mess. And
cool.
So I did a lot, started and realized that an awful lot of those folks, doctors especially, were struggling financially, right? They were making a lot of money, but they were having a hard time squirreling away. So I headed down the path of that advisory side of the business, and spent a lot of time there. Mostly building technology and systems so that ultimately we could more efficiently help these people.
Okay.
And fast forward a little bit, as I sold that company, right, I did a bunch of merger and acquisition activity throughout my work there, buying and selling firms. Finally sell off the group there, and in the tail end of my work there, I had developed some technology that is SureUP today, and ultimately, it's 30 years of work in the making, right? And creating something, taking all of the experiences, and I think we all kind of do that to a certain extent, right? We leverage the lessons we learn along the way, and if we're able to kind of compartmentalize the pieces and then uncork them, right? Open them up and say, okay, let's see what we've got here, and what's meaningful and what's not. And if we can decipher between all of those and then ultimately create an opportunity that helps others, it's a wonderful thing. And that's where we are today, is trying to take not only my experiences, and frankly, mine are probably the least of the group. I've assembled a team of people, and that's one of the lessons I've learned over the years, is that you really got to surround yourself with people that are a lot smarter than you. And for me, that's never been an issue, right? There's rooms and rooms full of those people. But at the end of the day, kind of looking at what those people bring to the table and embracing those skill sets and creating this amalgam of skills that you can then market in the marketplace to help others. That's really, sort of the capstone of my career at this point, is creating that environment. And I love the collaboration. I love working with people and learning things all the time. And so it's been a lot of fun.
You've met tons of business owners. You've been through tons of M&A, lots of operational system fixes. I mean, you've probably seen it all over the last 25 years as you were building that firm. Now, the firm that you talked about there and the team, you sold that then before you started SureUP. Is that correct? Yep.
Yeah, there was a little bit of overlap. There was the technology development in the tail end of that company was happening.
Okay.
And that was separate and apart, but it was happening. So I developed the technology along with some other folks in the latter few years before I finally sold off the first company and then moved into the second. So now I'm fully vested in what I'm doing on the SureUP side.
So let's talk about SureUP for the listeners that may not have heard of it or haven't looked it up yet, and we'll make sure we put all the links to SureUP in the podcast when we launch it. Why don't you give us a nice overview, if you don't mind?
Sure, absolutely. So basically, SureUP is an engagement platform that's designed to educate members and propel them forward on a variety of total wellness topics. So healthy eating, exercise, financial wellness tools. It's basically a total wellness solution. And the angle that we're taking is we really want to improve the physical and financial health of working Americans. And taking all of the knowledge that I've been able to glean and then adding a number of other people with very diverse backgrounds, from fitness to finance. I mean, we've got a couple of physicians that are partners in our company. We've got a exercise physiologist, a whole number of different people. And the goal is to just, again, advance both physically and financially working America. And it's a task, right? I mean, America is, the statistic is 44% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency were one to arise.
I thought it was
That's a scary thing.
I thought that percentage was higher, actually. But yeah, I've read stats like that. Like the percentage of Americans that have more than $5,000 in the bank is a small number.
Oh, it's tiny. Yeah, that's tiny. And I think, what we need to do is take a different approach, right? Because as one of our partners shared with me, so we partner with some of the largest insurance agencies in the land. And one of the president of group benefits for that particular company shared with me that she viewed what we're doing as the opportunity to help the unhelpable. And I love the way she phrased that, because they're only unhelpable because the people that might help them won't do so because they can't be paid enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we need to do is democratize the opportunity to help these people advance, because if we don't, no one will.
That's great.
So we've used technology, right, which in my opinion is the great equalizer. We've used this technology to allow, and we've built distribution around that. So nationally we can scale the business, and for low cost of engagement, help employers to then help their underlying employees. And I think it's really exciting because I get to see it firsthand, not only help people, but help companies to attract, retain, and reward their employees. Mm-hmm. And that too has become a challenge, because when you look at the core in the marketplace.
One more time, your audio cut out just a tad right there. When you look at what? When you look at the core, I think, go ahead.
Yeah, when you look at the core benefits,
okay,
right, the healthcare, dental, vision, right, all of those things have become entitlements almost, right? It's an expectation
right.
that working America has that. What we're trying to do is unify all of that and say, look, you've got all these great benefits, but working America still is in trouble. We need to take a chance on these people and help them to become better educated and more informed about the things that they need to do, both physically and financially. Because while the financial statistics are dismal, the health statistics are worse. Mm-hmm. Right? Obesity is at an all-time high in this country, and with all of the knowledge that's out there, and all of the gym memberships that healthcare companies are willing to pay for, how is it possible?
Right.
So I think taking an approach where we engage people in a process, then we educate them, and finally empowering them to move themselves forward, it's what makes me get up every day. You can't see it, but over my whiteboard behind me, the three words that are up there: engage, educate, empower. Right? Those three words drive me every day.
So in layman's terms, let me just ask you a few questions here. So SureUP is a platform. So tell me how much of this I get wrong. So if I'm an employee that works for, let's say I work for Riderflex, okay? Riderflex signed up to use SureUP. I'm an employee, so now I have this platform that I can use. It's this thing that engages me on my phone or whatever, and it gives me advice around staying physically fit. It gives me advice around interest rates and investments and buying cars and how much I should have in savings. Like, what does it tell me to do?
So let me just clarify. So it won't tell you to do anything.
Okay.
So instead, take the word advice and just exchange that for education.
Okay.
And all we really do is we provide an educational background that empowers these people to make better decisions. So take the financial equation. The decision to buy or lease a car really shouldn't be left up to the dealership. Right? We ought to go in with an expectation of what we're going to do. And we provide calculators for people to better understand the difference. What's best for me? Because what's best for the dealer is different, right? So we need to arm ourselves as consumers of most anything before we walk into a store. Same thing with physical fitness, right? You go to a gym and you can tell right away as you walk through those doors, who understands the need for form and who doesn't.
Right.
So what we do is we provide people with information that we've all kind of curated, right? We've either made it ourselves or we've found it that is valuable. So you mentioned earlier on, I'm an Ironman distance triathlete, okay? And I consume data, right? I love to learn about stuff.
Okay.
Some of that stuff is helpful to the average athlete. You don't have to go 141 miles, to look at fitness, right? I mean, if you're trying for your first 5K, fantastic. Let's take what I've learned and provide you access to it. Some of it you'll like, some of it you won't. So what?
Yep.
It's great information. Same thing with, nutrition or, mindfulness or you name it, right? A lot of these different things that we all do during the course of our day, some of which I do, some of which my partners do. We have, as I mentioned, 2 physicians on our partnership role. They've got a very different perspective than I have, right? So when I tell them I'm going to, jump on a keto diet and I'm going to have, eggs and bacon 3 meals a day until I lose 24 pounds, they look at me like, you're crazy. That's not the way to do it, right? So having different perspectives, I think, helps everybody. And I think, if we're careful about what we put in our wellness channel that's found within our SureUP app, it can be entertaining too, right?
Yep.
Lots of different ways to engage people and get them moving forward. And that's again, really our goal: engage, educate, empower, rinse and repeat. Let's do it over and over again.
And your revenue as a company, SureUP, comes from, I guess the company pays you, right? Whoever you I don't know, Nissan hires you or whatever, or they pay you, not the employees, correct?
It's actually a 2-pronged revenue model. So what we've done is, again, to democratize this, we've got a very low cost of entry for the employer to offer what we call an engagement program.
Okay.
And that engagement program has a series of components that help get their employees moving forward. And also, I think, helps the employee better appreciate the employer for the benefit they offer. Okay. In addition to that, we offer employees the opportunity to kind of the in-app upgrade, right? The ability to do more with the app. Some of those things might be a college loan repayment opportunity, right? So things that we've integrated as resources that we allow them to access. And we receive nothing from the companies that we introduce these users to. And I think that's a very distinctive model. I've always looked at the need to be objective, be able to provide resources that we think are being helpful to the end employee or user, while avoiding the issue that comes from the company paying us to be there. So we've avoided that completely by eliminating that. And where payments might be due us at SureUP, what we've instead chosen to do, and let's just take a college loan refinance type company as an example, what we've chosen to do is to take whatever payment they would normally remit to us and have them credit it directly to the borrower's balance. So as a result, SureUp's actually helping them to reduce their college debt by not taking payment from the company that we made the referral to. And I think that's a really important thing. And I hope that we all start a movement in that direction, where instead of, a wellness company, be it financial wellness or physical wellness, instead of selling someone else's goods and services, or frankly selling our own in the environment, let's take the high ground and let's move the ball downfield for these people. Because if we really want to help them, the way to do that is maybe to make less money. It's the Jerry Maguire approach, right? Fewer clients, less money, right? And for those of us that have seen that movie, we recognize at the end it turns out better than it was in the middle. So, and I've had those experiences, right, where less money, fewer clients doesn't necessarily turn out as well as more money. But I think for now we'll use that model.
and now you're live. It's launched. You have clients. You have revenue. You're in motion. Correct.
Correct. Yeah. We're live. We're launched. We have some of the largest companies in the land leverage our platform.
Great.
We've chosen to go the intermediary route, so we don't sell direct to businesses, but rather sell our services through intermediaries.
Okay.
And we've done it that way so as to avoid conflict with our intermediaries. Because if we're out selling direct to customers that they could ultimately sell, it seems the conflict presents itself. So by avoiding that completely, we position the opportunity to support these intermediaries in the delivery of the offering.
Okay. A couple of comments / questions. So as I was preparing for the podcast and studying you and, tracking you down and trying to figure out everything I could about you and your company, one of the things I asked my wife this morning, I was getting some coffee. My wife's worked for TJ Maxx Marshalls for about 14 years. And I said, don't you guys have some sort of like wellness program or financial program, or like, don't you have like a group or a company you can call for advice or whatever? Let's say you've never purchased a house before and one of your assistant managers needs to know what to do. Don't you have something like that, at Marshall's? And it's so funny how she reacted. She goes, yeah, I think we do. I don't really know for sure. She didn't know. She's been working there for 14 years. And she didn't really know whether or not they had anything. And I think they have something. I don't know what they have, but it's interesting. And so then I thought more about it. And as a former CEO and COO myself, where we've had some type of program that employees can benefit from, not necessarily like SureUP, but stuff that they could use to help them in some way on some topic. Employees never take the time. They never take the time to look at it or use it. How do you get around that? I'm just curious about that, because I've seen programs that companies offer and employees just never use it. They never sign up for it. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
so we've run into that, and we've had that comment from a number of companies that have executed on a program like this in the past, and the way we approach it is very different. We believe that you have to proactively engage the employee in an experience that gets them involved. You can't just offer a program and say, hey, this is great, good for you, go get them, right?
Exactly.
That doesn't work, because to your point, your wife working there for 15 years. Yeah. It's like beneficiary designations on your 401k plan.
Yeah, right.
Like, when was the last time you looked at those?
Exactly.
I mean, when I got hired, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Maybe they've changed, right? Or maybe they.
Right.
I think we all have to take a more proactive stance that helps people better understand, not just that they have a benefit like SureUP in place that could actually help them with the things that they do every day. But also take a good look at the benefits that the company's offering, because, look, the vast majority of companies out there offer wonderful things to their employees. They really do. We need to build awareness around that, because the employer spends so much money on that stuff,
right,
that the employee isn't appreciating it. First of all, that's the problem. Yep. But secondly, if they're not using it, why spend the money?
Right.
So we can build an awareness around what employers offer their employees for benefits as well. And truthfully, from a financial perspective, and a lot of the companies out there might not like hearing this, but the fact of the matter is, the first place an employee should be looking for things like life insurance and disability is in their group plan. It's already available to them. They're just not taking advantage of it. Yet the life insurance salesperson that's out in the marketplace may not share that with them.
Right.
So I think it's important that people become more aware and empower themselves with the information that would allow them to make better decisions overall. And I think companies do a really good job at offering benefits. We simply heighten the awareness around those benefits, and to the extent that there's not enough life insurance or there's not enough disability insurance available within the group plan, certainly you have to supplement it. There's no question. We're all, the vast majority of Americans are underinsured.
Yes.
Whether it's their homeowner's insurance or life insurance or disability, it doesn't matter, right? So property and casualty, life, disability, The vast majority of people are underinsured. They need the coverage. They just need to be made aware of why they need it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially what we do, is help them understand the why. They can get the what in any number of places.
And you're right. So many people do need the help. I mean, you started throwing out some percentages earlier. I mean, the number of people overweight, the number of people with, no idea how much they should have in savings, whatever the, financial pieces are. I mean, God, I see it every day. I mean, so many people really need advice and input on what to do. And if they'll take the time to use it, there are programs like SureUP that can help them, right? I mean, there are people that will help them if they'll listen and take the time to do it.
Absolutely. And I think the key is, and I've embraced technology as a deliverable, right? So I think the key is, from a system standpoint, to allow these people to consume the education in their fuzzy bunny slippers, right? Let them do it where they are, when they want, whether it's on their iPad or their computer. They don't need someone sitting at the kitchen table telling them about it, right? I mean, it's available to them. Let's leverage technology to reach the people that no one wants to reach.
I love it.
And let's help everybody. Because here's the thing, right? A good friend of mine shared this with me. He said, listen, people don't need a handout. They need a hand up. Mm. And if you really think about that statement, right? They don't need a hand out. They need a hand up, right? You need to reach down and help these people stand. Let's move forward as a culture, as a country. Mm. And I think that's a wonderful way to live, right? Let's give people a hand up, and SureUP, right? There's a reason for the up, right? We're trying to give people a hand up.
I love it.
And that's the goal.
By the way, my visual on give people a hand up, as you said it, my visual is, hey, you're using your legs to try to stand up too. You're trying, you're putting forth effort to get up. I'm helping you. We're doing it together. I'm not lifting you up without you exerting any energy. That's my visual. I think that's what you're saying, if I understand you right.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're not alone, right? You can use supports around you. You just need to be made aware of them, right? They're everywhere. We live in a wonderful country, right? There's so much opportunity. It's everywhere. If someone like me can be successful, anybody can, honestly. Mm-hmm. And, I remember when I crossed the finish line at my first Ironman event, I remember thinking, if I can do this, anybody can, right? Anybody really can. You just have to, you've got to commit yourself. And the Ironman analogy is just such a wonderful analogy for business, right? You hop in the water for a 2.4 mile swim, you dry yourself off, you pull off the wetsuit, you hop on the bike for 112 miles, just to top it off with a marathon at the end. It's great, but it's really the last couple of miles on that marathon when you're starting to hear the music near the finish line and the hair on the back of your neck starts to stand up. It didn't matter. The prior 15 hours of the day, they melt away. And it propels you to the finish line. And if you stick around long enough in the small business marketplace, you'll see an awful lot of those kinds of stories, right? Mm-hmm. People that they almost drowned in the water, right? It was tough, the first leg of the race. And they rode a while, maybe coasted a bit in the middle, and the run was tough. But as they near the finish line and approach retirement and exit that business, hopefully with a check in hand, right? Because they've sold something of value off to someone else, the hair stands on the back of your neck. And we should all celebrate that achievement for the employee who reaches retirement, or the business owner that reaches that point where they can hand it off to their kids or grandkids. It's a wonderful thing in this country to be able to do those things, and very exciting.
Now, that's a nice segue. I want to ask you a couple of things about entrepreneurship. And we give out a lot of advice on this podcast for entrepreneurs or people that want to be an entrepreneur or start a business. Let me just ask you, what advice would you give to that business owner that, let's say they're in the middle, right? They just finished the swim, and they're taking off the wetsuit and getting ready to get on the bike, and it's painful. They're cold. They're tired. They're thinking, I don't know if I can do this. At that moment, let's say they're 2 years in, they're 24 months in, they're starving, they're 2 months behind on their mortgage, they've already drained their savings, but they have a great service or a great product and they believe in it, but they're tired, they're almost out of money. Talk to that person. What advice would you give that person?
I've been there. I definitely had those experiences. I think, perseverance is, certainly an underrated trait in the small business environment. I think if you believe in what you're doing and it can make a difference for people, then it's probably worth pursuing. Now, your spouse may disagree. And I've had those experiences. My wife is as supportive as anyone can be, given the lifestyle that I've chosen to live in the small business world. It isn't easy on the household, but at the end of the day, again, if what you have makes a difference to people, and you can make a positive, indelible mark either on the planet or your local community or wherever the case may be, it's certainly worth pursuing. Now, the grain of salt there is you may have to supplement your income for a while. I mean, if you are behind on the mortgage, the bank's not too thrilled about that, right? And what comes next is not too much fun. So you may have to kind of take your time and slow. So let's use the bike analogy. If you get out of your wetsuit and you hop on that bike for a 112-mile ride and you boogie it up that first hill because you're all, charged up and ready to go and you can't wait, you may not finish the 112 miles, right? You've got to pace yourself. And my coach, he would say to me, listen, Ironman is all about the second half of the run. So it isn't at all about how well you do on the bike or how well you swim. It's about the second half of the run. If you're starting the second 13.1 miles and you feel good, you've paced yourself properly. And I think pace is important in business because we don't have an endless supply of cash generally, right? You've got to apportion that properly, and that's a management problem. And I learned that very early on, helping some of these doctors work through their systems and cash flow. They're generating a tremendous amount of cash flow. They're just spending it all. Like, well, when the month ends, if you don't have anything in the bank, you didn't get any further than you did the month before, right? Let's understand. And that's an exercise that I think in the small business environment, it's amplified, right? Any small environment amplifies that outcome, both good and bad. Right. And we've got to be aware of that as small business people. And look, I'm cut from the cloth of small business, so my heart bleeds for those people, and I love to help them. I love it, right? And to the extent I can, and quite frankly, vice versa, right? That the reciprocal of that is also true. Small business owners, they're very willing to help folks. The same is true in the pilot community. As a pilot of a small aircraft, you go to any airport, there isn't a pilot there that won't help you with something. It's a wonderful environment, and I've just been privileged enough to be surrounded by those environments as I've grown and built my career, and again, my wife has been the rock, the most supportive of all.
It is true. I mean, for those listeners, yes, once you're an entrepreneur and a business owner, or you're even thinking about starting a business, there are a ton of people that will help you. I mean, almost every business owner I've ever met, any type of entrepreneur, they're just willing to just give you all the advice they can. They actually want to see you succeed. Even if they're a competitor, sometimes they'll just talk to you because they it's like this brotherhood, right? They just want you to do well. And there are a ton of people that will give advice. I couldn't agree more. It sounds like you also believe, and I think I hear you saying, hey, if you're just getting started, or if you're hitting a speed bump, it is okay Okay. It's okay to go down and work 2 night shifts at Home Depot if you have to. Do what you have to do to bring in revenue on the side to keep your business going, is what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. If you've got something that, again, is worthwhile and you believe makes a difference,
Okay.
and you see a path to business, you got to stick with it.
Stick with it.
Right? And as you evolve and you need additional cash flow in the household, absolutely, there's nothing wrong with going down to Home Depot. There are wonderful places around that will hire you, especially if you're a small business minded person. They love that. It's an infectious kind of thing, right? And I don't you may or may not remember this, but when Home Depot first emerged as a real player, you'd walk the aisles of the plumbing department or electric department.
Yep.
You'd have electricians and plumbers and these people working, basically moonlighting.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Exactly.
It's harder to find those people today because they're so busy out in the marketplace.
Right.
But that's where they went. And when times were lean in their small business, they went and worked there. There's no shame in that.
Exactly.
You're trying to do something that matters, and sometimes you gotta work the night shift. And I did it. I worked 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning to 8, so that I could put myself through school. I lived it, right? So it isn't fun all the time. I can assure you that, right? But you got to do what you have to do to make things work. And sometimes that means you got to take the job and do that while you're, allowing what you've set out to accomplish to mature a little bit. And that maturity sometimes takes longer than we'd like, and certainly will take longer if you're not working 16 hours a day at it.
Right.
So one of my other friends, said to me, and I say it all the time now, as a small business owner, you can work any 16 hours of the day you want.
That's true.
Right? Because most people see the small business environment as flexibility, right? And it is flexible. You can work any 16 hours of the day you want. Right. It doesn't matter which ones. Right. But, but often people also see the fruits of the labor, not the labor.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. It's there.
Yeah.
Anything worthwhile.
Yep.
And the trouble with opportunity is it often comes disguised as good old fashioned hard work. And if you're willing to put that good old fashioned hard work into something, the opportunity may surface. Right.
I love it.
But you got to work hard at it. Nothing comes easy. It's a tough environment, but there's a lot of grit there. People that are willing to stay the course and really work at it, they win.
They win.
And it's terrific.
Yeah. If there's anybody out there who thinks starting a business is going to allow you to work 4 hours a day, that's funny. So I know I've already kept you a bunch. Do you have time for a couple more questions? I know we're already edging up. Okay. So the other thing that we do on the podcast is we give advice for executives, maybe first-time executives, and specifically we talk about what it's like to hire people and interview people and how to make the best decisions on hiring people. Out of everything you've experienced in life so far, what do you look for when you're hiring somebody? What character traits or personality types are you looking for when somebody's sitting in front of you? Let's say somebody pings you and says, "Hey, I want to be a sales manager for SureUP," or whatever, whatever the title is. That person sitting in front of you, what are you looking for, and what questions are your favorite? Maybe can you speak to some of that?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, what I'd want to see is a level of independence. Okay. And frankly, most of this is not resume based.
Okay.
Right. People spend so much time. They say, "Oh, I got this piece of paper right here. This is me." I don't even look at it. I don't care what's on the piece of paper. Right. What I care about is who's in front of me. Can they handle themselves in a conversation? Are they self-starters? Can they work independently? Small business owners and I think large business owners, I've had limited experience in the large corporate world. you want people that can kind of autonomously do the job that they're supposed to do.
Right.
And you don't want to babysit them. And as a small business owner, you don't have time. There is no time to babysit people. Either they get their stuff done and, their light goes on and goes off at whatever time it starts and stops. It is what it is. And so I'm looking for people that understand that, right? I don't care whether they show up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't care if they leave at 3. It doesn't matter to me as long as what they need to do gets done. And that takes a special person because there's abuse there too, right? So if you're not supervising and babysitting people, sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't, and I get it. I'm a family guy. I got 3 kids, right? So I understand that, stuff happens and I want to be at the soccer game. I totally want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm supportive of that. But I don't want to hear that the job isn't complete.
Right.
Right? Not as a function of that. Now, if I've loaded too much on someone to get done, okay. Right? I expect a lot from people and I expect them to thrive. And I'm not sure there are any specific questions I might ask, right? I tend to like to see how the conversation goes.
Okay.
And you learn an awful lot about people by just letting them talk.
Isn't that
right?
the truth?
Ask the open-ended questions, right? What makes you get up in the morning, right? And if it's the alarm clock, I'm not sure that's the answer I'm looking for.
Right. It's so funny. Of course, at Riderflex, we place candidates for a living as a recruiting firm, and we force our candidates to do video interviews. I'm usually the one conducting it. Well, we also have an HR manager, an HR executive here at Riderflex, and she will watch the video interviews that I do. And she'll call me sometimes and go, how come why aren't you following the list of questions that I provided for you to ask these? I'm like, hey, listen, I'm just like you. I'm like, I just get them going and I pull back the covers naturally. I'll figure out who they are. I don't need a list in front of me.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think the better the conversation, the more you learn about people. And you have to be a judge of that person's character in the moment. And,
right.
We all grow up saying, hey, don't judge people. Rest assured, when you're in an interview, you're being judged. That's the way it's happening, right? And whether you make the second interview or the third interview, depending on how high a level position you're talking about, depends entirely on, whether or not you've handled yourself well during that initial discussion and the subsequent discussions that follow.
Yep. So 2 more quick ones. I know we're almost out of time. You've had a great career so far. Really, you've done so much. You could retire right now and probably go to your lake house and chill and feel pretty good about yourself, right? So congrats on all that.
Thank you.
When you look back at your life, and I'm guessing because you're right around my age, and I already know once you get past 50, you start reflecting a lot. I try to keep myself from doing it, but you start to reflect more and more as you get older. When you're reflecting back and you're thinking about your early adulthood, if you could call your 21-year-old self and tell that young man anything, what would you tell him today?
Oh, that's a good question. It's the classic, if I knew then what I know now.
Right. Exactly.
I would probably call and, tell my 21-year-old self that, while there are going to be bumps in the road, some are larger than others, the view is normally worth the climb. And I think that's talking to someone out in Colorado, right? You get some pretty tall peaks, certainly taller than what we have here in the East Coast.
Right.
You look at the Rockies and you say, boy, is the view worth the climb? Always, right?
Yep.
And I think that's what you learn as you get a little older. You kind of learn that those tough times were worthwhile, right? You learn something from them. And I try to convey even to my kids. So I've got a 16-year-old, I've got an 18-year-old, or almost 18-year-old, and I've got a 20-year-old. So basically looking at the ages of these kids and looking at the opportunities that are ahead of them, right? The challenge is as a parent, you can't talk to them like you could to your 21-year-old self.
It is different. You're right. Yep.
It's a different thing, right? It's hey, what do you know? And it's the same thing I had said to my dad, right? It's you have to experience it, and I think we ought to embrace that. I think kids ought to have those experiences and make their mistakes. And as much as I certainly do it, and I do it, my wife will tell me, you got to let the kids fail. You try to insulate them and protect them. But at the end of the day, they're going to have those experiences in order to win themselves.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine. I can't imagine what it must be like to be a kid of a dad who's an Ironman and does long distance triathlete stuff. It's like when they complain about something or they get a little wimpy, coming to you must be pretty hard.
Well, you want to inspire them to be more than they think they can be on their own.
Love it.
Right. And whatever that is, their threshold's going to be different, right? They're all different. I got great kids. I've been, very lucky. My wife has essentially raised them. I've done the best I can to corrupt them along the way, but inspiring them to be more than they think possible is, that should be the goal. And you should do that for employees. You should do that for your kids. It's a very fulfilling thing. And frankly, my kids they're a lot smarter at their age than I am, frankly.
I'm sure.
And I think that's a great thing.
I'm sure that you are inspiring them for sure. I mean, they look at their dad and he's built and sold businesses, and here he is at his age, and he's in better shape than me. let me last question. If you were to describe your core purpose in a sentence or two, or a few words even, and I didn't let you tie children or your wife to the core purpose, because I'm kind of assuming that's the natural core purpose, to take care of them. If you pushed your answer beyond family and you had to describe your core purpose, how would you answer that?
I think I would describe it as an opportunity to help others be more than they can be on their own, right? To collaborate with people in a way that allows them to leverage the experiences that I have, and for me to leverage theirs, right? So being able to, sort of back and forth, that collaboration, I think, is so valuable. We don't take the time, I think, in life today to really listen, right? And if we do, we learn stuff, right? And it's a very rewarding thing. So I would say, the sense of purpose, the core component is, I want to help people, right? And sometimes helping people means you gotta listen to them and understand what they need before telling them what they need, right? and that's hard for me, honestly. It's something I have to work at every day.
It gets easier though as you get older. You get more patient with it though, probably, right?
Yeah, well, certainly more patient than my 21-year-old self.
Me too.
And less hair.
Yeah, right. Kris, really some inspirational stuff, man. Some great advice. I really appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. I will make sure that we put links into SureUP and your book, by the way, Succession or Failure. I'll put all that in the links to the podcast. I really appreciate you being on and sharing. Good stuff, my man.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it at the time.
I can't wait to maybe try to meet you in person. If you're in Colorado, let's definitely connect. If I'm ever out on the East Coast, you can take me to a Patriots game, right?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to a Patriots game. That'll be fun. We'll invite my friend Tommy too.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye. The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.